Hello, hello. Welcome back to the second to last section of Mapping the Edge by Sarah Dunant. Glad to have you here for the end of the book here. Just 2 more sections to go. We'll be done by the end of the week. So, good stuff. I will announce our next book next time. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you are subscribed, I guess, so that you can see the video that comes up on Thursday. And if you have been liking this book, give me a thumb. Got a little band-aid. And comment what you've liked about it or what you didn't like about it. It's always interesting to hear what the readers enjoy. And if you ever do read the description, you'll be able to see other books that I'm currently reading at the time, all of that good stuff. But let's jump in. We are on page 258. And yeah, starting with home, Sunday. I woke to an empty bed and the sound of Lily laughing wildly, a jumble of high-pitched cartoon voices around her. I stood at the top of the stairs and listened. Why don't adults laugh like that? Is it something to do with the size of the larynx or the state of the soul? I felt as if I had been up all night, which, of course, I had. In the sitting room, Lily was curled under a duvet, a bowl of cornflakes perched precariously on her lap, the rugrats shining in her eyes. Angelica, my favorite and Lily's, was throwing another tantrum. I closed the door on her exhilaratingly bad temper. In the kitchen, Paul was standing alone at the open garden door, smoking a cigarette. I couldn't remember how long ago he had given it up, and this wasn't the time to ask. He flicked the stub into the bushes as I came. In happier days, it would have been a gesture to drive the boys wild, but Paul was a married man now, and a worried one. Hi, how did you sleep? Awful, I said, plugging in the kettle and warming my hands over it like a campfire until it started to burn. Yeah, me too, he paused. The police rang. My head jerked up. When? This morning, around 9:30. And? Nothing. They've checked all the flights for today and tomorrow coming out of Pisa and Florence. She's not booked on any of them. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. But they found where she was staying, tracked her down through the passport computer details. A Hotel Cori, in Via Fiosolano, near the Duomo, apparently. Never heard of it. What did they say about her? That she checked out on Thursday afternoon as planned. Did she say where she was going? No, they assumed the airport. The girl on the desk said she asked her to call a cab. She doesn't remember where to. She's not sure that she ever knew. But she did see her go? He nodded. I felt myself suddenly tremendously excited, as if somewhere in this one concrete piece of information lay the answer to all the questions. So all they have to do is track down the cab. He sighed. It's not that easy. The cab company the girl rang said it would be a while, and Anna told her not to bother, that she'd get one in the street. Oh. We sat for a while. Florence in high season. How many cabs? How many drivers? How many destinations in a day? Hold on to what you've got, Estella. It's better than nothing. But whatever it was, we know that it happened between the hotel and the airport. Yeah, we know that. Did you tell them about the phone call? I said casually as I opened the fridge to get out the milk. At least he had the decency to hesitate. No. Then, the milk's on the table if you're looking. I grunted thanks, but I didn't let him off the hook. If they had found her name on one of the flights, I would have done. How about the soulmates column? How about this? Let's see. How about the soulmates column? Did you mention that? He shook his head. It's not about a man. We don't know that, Paul, I said patiently. Yes, we do, he retorted, a flame of indignation rising within it. I rang the paper this morning, got the home number of the features editor she does stuff for, She told me that Anna handed in a story 2 weeks ago called Dating Games. Who you met, if they were kosher, that kind of thing. The guardian soulmate stuff was included in it. They haven't had time to run it yet. I told her to hold it till we knew more. My God, so it was a story. The photos, the circled adverts, the phone bills, all of it? All of it? I stirred the milk in and took a sip. The first hit of morning tea, like mainlining lifeblood. It's not the drug that counts, only the quality of your need for it. Last night's dope still hung around on the fringes of my mind, playing havoc with the notion of reassurance. So you don't think it's possible that she might have met somebody more serious and decided not to write about him? Why do you say that? I shrugged. Only because it was you who thought she was distracted. And then there's Mike's comments about her appearance. I mean, something had changed in her. There has to be an explanation for that. From the hall, the sounds of canned laughter grew suddenly louder. Then came some zip-zappy music for the credits to dance along to. I put my finger to my lips to stop Paul replying. 10 seconds later, Lily's head popped around the kitchen door. I'm still hungry, she said to anyone who was listening. Can I have some toast? Morning, I said. Angelica got over her temper tantrum? She nodded. Nothing so passé in a child's life as the last cartoon program. Brown or white? Paul got up from the table. White, of course. Butter or margarine? Margarine, of course. Marmalade or honey? There was pause. Nutella, of course, they said together. I was being treated to a floor show. For what purpose? Bring your cornflakes bowl in first, Paul said. Oh, not now. It's Spider-Man next. Yes, now. Paul. Hey, no bowl, a toast. She gave a theatrical sigh and flounced out. It struck me that if I hadn't been there, he probably would have given in. Keeping things normal can be tough sometimes. The living room door slammed behind her. He got up and started the toast anyway. You want some? I shook my head. Has Mike gone? Yeah, he had an early call. I paused. Paul? He looked up at me. I really like him. I think he's substantial, a good man. He grinned. Yeah, hard to find, eh? The invitation to the joke lay between us like a damp firework. It wasn't the morning for repartee. So, are you going to move in together? He turned back to the toast. We were. His back gave an angry sigh. Well, it depends on what happens here, doesn't it? Does it? I finished my tea. I don't see how. Oh, come on, Stella, he said, turning to me more aggressively this time. You must have thought about it. I took a breath. No, I lied, putting down the mug and staring into the bottom of it. In the olden days, so old I don't remember them, women could study the leftover tea leaves to help them with the bits of life they didn't understand. With the advent of the tea bag, we have lost our ability to see into the future. Sad. No, I haven't. He frowned at me for a moment, then came over and sat down opposite, leaving the toast unbuttered or unmargarined. He shook his head. Sorry. I gave him a, hey, no need to apologize gesture. I didn't sleep that well either. No. We sat for a moment in silence. You're really good with her, Paul. He shrugged, but didn't say anything. We'd cope, I said at last. Between us, we'd cope, and she'd be okay. But we won't have to, because it's not going to come to that. I know it's not. He glanced up at me and smiled. I smiled back. No, you're right. It's not. He paused. You can stay for a few days, right? You know I can. I'll stay for as long as it takes. He stopped. He was gearing up to something. You could feel it build. I'm due to be in Scotland tomorrow for a meeting. First thing in the morning. It's about a deal with a Scottish distributor. Quite important. I've tried to get a hold of him to cancel, but I don't have a home number. I nodded. Well, of course you have to go. He still wasn't looking at me. I could take the first plane at 6 a.m. or the sleeper. They've probably got some berths left. I paused. It was hard to know exactly what I was being told. What were you planning to do? I mean, before this? He sighed. I was going to go up this afternoon, meet some colleagues this evening. I shrugged. Then why don't you do that? What about you and Lily? What about me and Lily? What were we telling each other here? I realized I didn't know. We'll be fine, I said. No problem. You sure? And this time he looked up at me, a man wanting to do the right thing but needing a little space before he could work out exactly what that was. I, of all people, could hardly blame him for that. I smiled. Yes, I'm absolutely sure. He smiled back. Thanks, Stella. Across the kitchen, the bread popped out from the toaster. For a little while, neither of us moved. Then I got up from the table. I'll get the toast then. Away. Sunday. No sight this time, only smells and sound. The chemicals were fresh now, sharp, pungent, acting like smelling salts, kick-starting the brain back into consciousness. She could hear clattering, trays and bottles being moved around, water flowing, a tap like a fierce fountain hitting a metal sink underneath. The sound made her want to urinate. She remembered the time before she had woken, desperate for the loo. How long had she been unconscious then? 7, 8 hours? Same drugs, same sleep. Different kind of captivity. Her head was throbbing powerfully in time to her pulse now. No narcotic at work to soothe the ache. Nothing to smother the feelings. One thing was certain. She didn't want to die anymore. She opened her eyes to see how it would happen. She was propped in an armchair, a blanket over her tucking her in, her head held upright by a set of pillows carefully placed. Apart from the throb, she felt comfortable, cared for almost. In front of her, the cellar unfolded like a painting. Joseph Wright of Derby, a man who knew a few things about darkness and light. Along the far wall was the photographic stuff, a bank of washing and developing trays, a light box, and an enlarger slung from the ceiling. And above it all, a clothesline strung with damp new prints, a woman's body at the center of each, the borders glowing a mauvish white under the glare of the safe lamps. Outside of its reach, the room was purple-black, alive with shadows and dark silhouettes. The only one moving was his. He had his back to her, bent over the fixing tray, pulling a print to and fro between his fingers, lifting it out and holding it up to the light, then slipping it onto the line, the droplets of chemical falling around him. She watched him carefully. There was something different to his movements, a certain grace and fluidity that she had never seen before, as if concentration had loosened up his joints, oiling away his tension and shyness. He was doing what he was good at. After all, everyone has a talent for something. His were photography and voyeurism, to which she could also add violence and death. She went back to the photos, bracing herself for more images of her own terror. Instead, she got beauty. Paola, in love with the camera, if not the photographer, standing tall in a long white dress so sculpted onto her that it resembled snakeskin. The lighting played games with the glow of the material over her body, heavy breasts, the swell of her stomach against the silk, the outrageously rich curve of her ass. At a distance, she was almost more landscape than body. Erotic snow dunes, natural female down to the last wind-sculpted curve. On someone with less style, the effect would be overblown. But this woman had the confidence to carry it off. She looked like the actress who played the actress in La Dolce Vita, a body ripe to the edge of rotting. Too much of a woman for any one man to hold, especially this one. She tried to swallow, but her throat felt coated with sand. She needed to drink. The cracks of her lips must have made a noise. because he had turned from the bench, hands cupped wet in the air, before she had time to close her eyes. She noticed an instant stiffness take hold of his limbs, a stand to attention almost, as if it was he who was scared of her. Ridiculous. She glanced back at the woman, La Dolce Vita, Italian, a looser way with both the body and the tongue. Ciao, Andreas, she said softly, then took her time while the thought connected to the lips. Head was what? And the word for hurt. She tried it softly. My head hurts. He looked at her for a while, as if not sure what to do next. What did you say? And the language sounded better on him, too, the words gentler, less manufactured. This time it came out more clearly. I said, my head hurts. I need some water. There was water on the table, but you have to take it slowly. The drug will still be in your system. She reached over and took the glass, then sipped it slowly as he had instructed. It helped. It had been years since she had used her Italian for anything more than hotel bookings or chit-chat on trains, but there had been one summer when she was young and her fluency was still new and vibrant in her ear, when she had gorged on it, creating romance with a Tuscan boy she had thought she would love forever, but in fact had forgotten within a few years. Coming back to Florence, she knew now, had been an attempt to rediscover that language in herself, to draw excitement from the present tense, to feel the pull of the future as well as the weight of the past. What a shame all it had led to was death. Who was she? She said, gesturing to the woman on the clothesline. He frowned. I told you. She's Paola. She's my wife. Now, in his own language, there was no excuse for getting the tense wrong. She said nothing. You don't believe me because you can't imagine how she would want to marry someone like me. I know that. But you are wrong. She's my wife. She took a deep breath. What about the others? The others? The others, yes, like me. He stared at her for a moment, then shook his head. I see you don't understand. There are no others. You are the first, she supplied softly, and because it couldn't have been the word that caused him the trouble, she knew it had to be the feeling behind it. Yes, and he said it so quietly that she almost didn't hear it. The first. Oh God, the first. He probably didn't even know what to do, how to do it. It would be messy and awful. You're right. I don't understand. Why me? I don't even look like her. Not really, that's true, but you sound like her. Sound? Your voice. I heard it that morning in the cafe on Via Guerra. You're speaking in Italian to the waiter. Can I have a glass of water and an espresso, please? And this time he fashioned the Italian differently, her accent roughening it up at the edges. So perfect. English and Italian together. If I closed my eyes, you were her. You were Paola. Anna took another sip of the water. So he likes the sound of your voice in Italian, so keep on talking. What happened between you? You mean, why did she marry me? Anna shrugged. I didn't. No, you are right, of course. Why would she? Why should she? She could have had many men. There were flies all over her. But I had something they didn't have. I had money, you see. I had a lot of money. And I was very happy to give it to her. I didn't care what she did with it, only that she used it to make herself happy. She liked that. It was a good marriage, better than many. And the photos? It was my hobby. She indulged me. It was not such a hardship for her. No, it didn't look as if it had been. Even in the mirror photos, there was no sense of doubt. People love each other for the strangest of reasons. 7 years ago, she had been obsessed by a man simply because she couldn't have him. There had almost been no cure for that one either. She noticed he had moved, that he was leaning back against the workbench now, his arms crossed. If you didn't know better, you might say he was a man at ease with himself, the cleansing power of confession. But it didn't last, she said quietly, because, of course, how could it have? He gave a little shrug. Even money is boring when you have too much of it. I knew that long before she did. She left you? His head moved down a little. It was possible to read the gesture as a nod. She left you, and you followed her. Those were the pictures I saw in the living room, weren't they? The ones with the other people cut out? It was for her own good. With money and her looks, men smelled that kind of thing. She didn't realize it. She didn't know how strong the smell was. She thought they liked her. She couldn't tell when they didn't. She would have got hurt. So you brought her home again. She paused, thinking it through. Like you brought me. And he didn't speak. He didn't move, but he didn't deny it either. And then she died. Still, he said nothing. It didn't matter. They both knew it anyway. It was why they were here in this basement now together. Did you kill her, Andreas? No. And the word, same in both languages, shot out in echo around the room. No, I didn't kill her. I would never kill her. She did it to herself. If she hadn't gone so crazy in the car. She waited, but no more words came. The car. Was it the drug? She said, remembering that moment in the night, the fear of flying and the terrible sense of falling. The drug you gave her? He closed his eyes, hugging his arms tighter around his body as if to give himself the comfort that no one else could. I got the dose wrong. I gave her too little. She came awake in the car too soon. We were on the road to Castantino, up in the hills, drops everywhere. She went crazy. She would have crashed us both, so I gave her more. The whole syringe I had in the glove compartment. It was hard to judge because she was fighting me. He paused. Then she stopped the fighting and went to sleep. When she got back, I carried her to the room. I sat with her every moment, but she didn't wake up. God, how pleased he must have been to see me upright that next morning, she thought. What does it do, this drug? She said quietly. He stops. He sighed. It stops your muscles working, a kind of paralysis. You don't feel anything until it wears off. She took another sip of the water. How much had he given her? How much did it take to kill her? What good would it do him if he did? I didn't mean to hurt you, he said, his eyes on the floor. I only wanted to have you here with me for a while. I thought it would make things better. I knew it couldn't be the same, but while I was watching you in Florence, you seemed like you were looking for something different, something new. I don't know. He paused. I didn't know you had a child. And the way he said it caught her attention. She remembered his surprise that first evening in the car when she had told him about Lily. It had thrown him then, just as it still threw him now. She took another sip of the water and pulled herself upright. The flesh around her eye where he had hit her felt huge and spongy. It might leave a scar, but it wouldn't kill her, not on its own. Lily. Her absence filled the room. Lily. The reason she couldn't indulge him with her death, however tired she might feel. Yes, I have a child, she said slowly. And this time she spoke in English, because there could be no room for mistakes now, and because she needed him to be able to tell the difference between a dead wife and a living stranger. I don't know if I can explain to you what that means. You don't love children in the same way you love adults. It's a passion, yes, even an obsession, but it's a benign one that brings out the best in you rather than the worst. She paused. The distance between him and her seemed so immense, too great for words to bridge. But they were all she had. My daughter is more beautiful than any lover I ever had. She's more innocent, more knowing, more spiritual, more physical, more greedy, more giving, more loving, more manipulative than anyone I've ever known. She can't help it. It's just who she is. It's as if there's a light in her which she hasn't found the control switch for yet, an energy which pulses out across other weaker signals, pulling them into her orbit. She's not afraid of anything or anyone, and I love her so much for that. In some way, I've helped her to be that. My spirit, my courage. I think she drank it out of me when she was born. I didn't used to mind. I assumed that it was just what happened, whether it should or not. But there must have been times recently when I have wondered if there is anything of me left, anything not connected with her. She stopped. He was not looking at her. She had no idea whether he was even listening. It didn't matter. I think that's why I came to Florence in the first place, to find out who I was without her. If I was without her, to see if I could do it alone. Maybe that's what you smelled in me the first day in the cafe, a woman worn out by worship, just as you are worn out by worshiping her. From the clothesline behind his head, one of the prints broke free from its peg and flapped its way down to the floor near his feet. He stared at it, his fingers flexing automatically out toward it. A dead woman, still dictating his every move. No, he wasn't listening anymore. But she would say it anyway, for herself, if not for him. That's why I have to go home, you see? Because I understand it so much better now. I understand that I love her, but I also love myself, and that I can't live my life through another person, however magnificent or overwhelming they may be. She sighed. And that's also why you have to let me go, so you can do the same thing for yourself, can start your life again without her, just as you are letting me start mine. While she was talking, he had picked up the print and was holding it in one hand, staring down at it. He can't do it, she thought. He can't let her go, because if he did, there'd be nothing left. Poor guy. She watched his right hand reach out for something on the dark desk nearby in the glow of the safe light. She caught the glint on the point of a needle. He put down the photograph carefully and walked over to her, the syringe held down behind his back, as if he was genuinely embarrassed by it. She didn't move. There was nowhere to go. He stopped in front of her. I'm not going to hurt you, he said in Italian. That was never what I wanted to do. No, I said. I know. As he lifted the syringe upward, she noticed it was full. Away, Sunday p.m. She didn't wake, and he didn't wake her. When she finally opened her eyes, the shutters were drawn, and her watch read 3:40 p.m. As she pulled herself up in surprise, she realized that the room felt different in other ways too, neater, the surfaces less filled with clutter. She went into the bathroom. By the side of the basin, there was only her wash bag and her toothbrush. In the wardrobe, her trousers hung next to a rail of empty hangers. By the door, her new suitcase sat alone. She stood next to it for a moment, not quite able to take in what she was being told. When she called downstairs, reception told her he had booked out this morning, but that the room was paid for till tomorrow. She didn't find the envelope until she put down the receiver. It was propped at the back of the table lamp, the name on the front in capital letters. The letter was in black fountain pen. She couldn't remember if she had ever seen his handwriting before, but as soon as she unfolded the page, she knew it was his. big and bold with a touch of the italic about it. It reminded her of an architect lover she had once had, someone for whom the visual construction of the words was almost as important as their meaning. Both of them were men who aspired to beauty, in art, if not in life. "I've absolutely no idea what you are going to say to me," she thought, as she started to read. "Well done, Samuel/Marcus. You remain a surprise right to the end." And here's the letter. Sunday, 9:35 a.m. Dear Anna, I've been wandering the streets for the last hour, wondering what to do. I called home this morning. There was something I had to check, and a neighbor answered the phone. She told me that my wife had been taken to the hospital. It happened late last night. She had taken an overdose. The hospital says her condition is stable and she is out of danger, but obviously I have to go to her. There is a plane at 12:30 from Florence Airport. I can catch it if I leave now. I don't know what to say. I can't lie to you. I don't know how to tell the truth. There were things I didn't tell you about her, about our relationship, because they were too difficult. And if I had, well, anyway, it's not the time to start now. I'm sorry. You will think me a total bastard, and that wouldn't be far from the truth, although there are mitigating circumstances, but once again, this isn't the time for them. I thought about waking you up to tell you all this, but I suppose I didn't have the courage to face your reaction. So much for what you call my monstrous confidence, eh? I've taken the car because it's in my name and I have to go return it, and because it's the quickest way for me to get to the airport. The hotel manager tells me there is a train from a nearby station to Florence through Arezzo and from there to Pisa, and he has promised me that he will get you to the right place at the right time to catch it. Your ticket will be waiting at the British Airways desk in the name of Anna Revell. The flight leaves at 7:45 tomorrow morning. BA I-45. I want to say that I'll call you in London as soon as you get back, but right at this moment I don't know that I can promise anything, since I don't know what will greet me on my return. Knowing what you know about me now, you probably wouldn't feel like answering the call anyway. I don't quite understand what happened between us last night, and this isn't the time to ask. I'll leave it a while before I get in touch, so you can think about how you feel. You can always put the phone down on me. I wouldn't be surprised. Forgive me, Anna. I want you to know that I didn't lie about everything, only the things I couldn't handle. I shall miss you in more ways than I can say. If I say more, I risk you not believing me, and I'm already feeling guilty about too many things as it is. Yes, me, guilty. Who would have believed it? Yours with love, Samuel. It was a good letter, even down to its apparent spontaneity, with the odd words scored out or overwritten in haste or uncertainty. As a way of ending an affair, it delivered all the right romantic ingredients: guilt, passion, confession, and the sense of being overwhelmed by circumstance, the stuff of melodrama. Nevertheless, by the time she'd finished reading, the words left echoing in her ears were not his, but Sophie Wagner's. Very emotionally articulate for an Englishman. Articulate, though not at all like the calculated vivisection that Miss Wagner had found herself subjected to. Was there a different method for every woman? A kind of matchmaking of gain to pain? Or had her abrasiveness the night before made him rethink his plans, decide on a swifter exit, one in which he didn't lose the initiative? So, was this about a scam complete, or a scam aborted? She realized that she still had no idea. She was not, however, entirely without ways of finding it out. The two most used numbers from his mobile had Geneva prefixes. That much the operator confirmed. She dialed the first and waited. After a while, an answering machine kicked in. The message was in English, then in French. The woman's tone, with its American accent, smooth and businesslike, no sex in it this time. You've gotten through to the Matterman Gallery. There was no one here to take your call. Please leave your name and number, and we will get back to you. The second number, home, was another answering machine. Different message, same voice. Anthony and Jacqueline are out at present. Leave a message after the beep. Or, if it's urgent, call the mobile at... She articulated the numbers with singular efficiency. Not a voice with an affinity to anything as unproductive as overdoses. She had had time to jot down just 2 more, but the pencil had been smudging and she couldn't be sure of the numbers. The first turned out to be Russia, a district on the outskirts of St. Petersburg. It rang 6 times and a man answered. Just as she picked up, she realized she had no idea what she was going to say. The voice answered in Russian. Hello, do you speak English? Yes, I do. And it was clear from the accent that he also did it well. I'm calling from the Matterman Gallery in Geneva. I've had a query about a painting that I think you may have helped us with earlier this year, February, I think it was. There was a pause. Either his English had got suddenly worse, or he hadn't liked what he had heard. Who is this calling? The Matterman Gallery in Geneva, Switzerland. Is Tony there? No, Tony and Jacqueline are away, but I'm sorry, you must have the wrong number. I can't help you. The line went dead. She put down the receiver. The phone rang immediately. What if it's him? She caught herself thinking as her hand reached out for it, ringing to see if I'm okay. But she knew it wasn't. Even before she heard the manager's voice, efficient, ever eager to help, Mr. Taylor had said that she would be wanting to catch an evening train for Arezzo in order to get herself to Florence that night. The 7:20 was the last through train, and the station was 30 or so kilometers away. In Sunday evening traffic, it might take a while. He had taken the precaution of ordering a taxi, which was downstairs waiting, but if she changed her mind, he could cancel it again. It struck her that she should call the airport now to book another seat. The final irony was that the ticket he had bought her was, of course, not in her own name, but she might find herself having to fund her own way home. But the number, when she got through, was engaged, and she didn't want to miss the train. Instead, she got the hotel owner to cash the rest of her English money in case she should need to buy another ticket. As he waved her goodbye on the steps, she felt, relieved to see her go. By the end of the season, he would have processed the Taylors into an exotic story of domestic violence and desertion. Even that wouldn't be as colorful as the truth, whatever that was. The journey to Arezzo took almost an hour. She sat watching the landscape turn from forest to scrubland, dotted with olive groves and vineyards as the train moved south down from the hills and into the valley, leaving Casentino. She remembered the morning they had driven out of Florence. Was it really only yesterday? The sun in her eyes, or romantic tales of fates and furies in her head. It was not as yet clear how close she, too, had come to losing her soul. For now, against the odds, she was all right, a woman cruising on a high-octane fuel of curiosity and outrage. She pulled her eyes in from the window. The leather suitcase was perched on the seat opposite, like some old-fashioned traveling companion. It was so stylish and perfect that it was hard to see it as a gift, rather than a token of his self-esteem. Add to it the list of things that didn't make sense. If this was a scam about fleecing lovers, why waste good money on rich gifts? Somehow they must be part of the deal. Fuck 'em stupid and leave them with something to remember you by. But the puzzle remained. Why spend so much on someone you were planning to steal from later? Unless you were going to get it back, of course. If you were going to burgle them, it didn't matter how much the gift cost. They wouldn't get to keep it anyway. Had Sophie Wagner's Russian presence walked out of the apartment with her antique rugs and jewelry? Was that what would happen to her? She'd come home to find the suitcase gone, along with the stereo and the computer. God knows, it was probably worth more than most of the other things in her house. The thought lit up like an electric light in her head. Of course, the most expensive object was the present that he stole back. That would explain why he had waited till Sophie Wagner got home. If all he wanted was her valuables, he could have sent someone in while he was betting her in another country. But he waited, presumably because whatever he had given her in St. Petersburg was more important than anything that was already there. She pulled the case over onto her lap. She was struck again by the extraordinary quality of the work, the suppleness of the leather, the perfection of the stitching. She slid her fingers over its soft sides, touching skin. It was what this story was about. Think about it, Anna, one more time. She and Sophie Wagner had met a stranger from the Wantads who claimed to be an art consultant, but who in fact made his money through scales. She opened it up and felt inside. Even the invisible bits were beautifully sewn, a veritable miracle of craftsmanship in an age of cheap disposable luggage. Scales, the art of theft, taking what didn't belong to you and making money out of it. She plunged her fingers farther down, feeling her way past the carefully wrapped wooden horse right to the bottom of the case. Its leather base was solid, with a substantial size, too, though still acceptable for hand luggage. The art of theft, or to be more accurate, the theft of art. 2 love affairs, 2 different places, St. Petersburg and Tuscany. The first, a city groaning with art and run by new bad boys willing to flog Mother Russia's heritage to the highest bidder. The second, a region so stuffed with historical treasures that it was virtually impossible to even document, let alone protect them all. It was just a question of matchmaking. Find the right collector and the right price, and the only problem is how to lift it off the walls or out of the vaults and get it safely out of the country. She felt the weight of the bag on her knees. She remembered herself sitting in the taxi that first afternoon from Florence to Fiesole, her old nylon hold-all on her lap, the heat sticking her clothes to the seat underneath. It was cooler now, but this case still felt heavier than the other one. Yet she had added nothing since then. Nothing, that is, but the bag itself. It was so simple that it was almost an insult, like giving a present in order to take it away again. The engine had started to slow down, and the voice over the speakers told her they were approaching Arezzo. She hauled herself out of the seat, the bag gripped tight to her chest, and they spilled out together onto the platform, her head spinning. She had just under 40 minutes to make the Florence connection. How long did it take to skin a pig a second time? In the end, she went to a hotel at the corner of the station piazza, because the loos were too small, the station waiting room too public, and she couldn't think of anywhere else where she wouldn't be disturbed. She took a room for the night. She explained that she had had her wallet stolen, losing everything but the 100,000 lira note she had just put on the counter, but that fortunately she had an emergency stash of British money sewn into the bottom of her suitcase. All she needed was a knife or scissors to cut it out with. He may or may not have believed her. She flashed her wrists to show there was no previous history of self-mutilation. No doubt he had seen or and heard weirder in his time. She took the bag and the knife upstairs and started cutting up pigskin. And that's where we're going to end this section, picking up next time on 279 for our last section of Mapping the Edge. I can't wait to find out how it ends, and I hope that you will join me for the last section. I will catch you then. Have a good week. Bye.